All right, so the first thing I had to do today, and I figured it out right before I came on. So we're in good shape. Orko. So let's see, Orko with a dash. ORKO character sheet. I like to get a turnaround if I can. Maybe it's not a. Okay, I guess. Now we're just gonna. Okay, I'm gonna take a look at this one. Come on, click character sheet. Okay, we got He-Man. We got a couple. It's not a turnaround. So I'm gonna keep this one. Let's try Orko. Paste without the dash images. Yeah, kind of the same. Okay. Pretty. He's got an O. He's kind of cloth. He's got his thing. Okay, I think I can work with this. Looks like he's got. I mean, it's been 40 years since I've watched a He-Man episode, but I just felt the need to do this. So let's take a look. I think this will work. I think this will be just fine. All right. Let's do this. Open image in new tab here. John, how's it going? Let me save this image here. We'll save this right on our desktop. Boom. All right. Okay. Yeah, and I think this'll work. We might have to go into Photoshop. You know what? We'll wing it. So, as per usual, let's go in here to texture, import, and we're gonna go to our desktop again. And oh yeah, I've been doing some Linux distros. That's always been exciting. Y'all want to learn Claude code and codecs with me? Okay, so we got this textures. I'm going to add it to our spotlight little plus sign. We're going to go ahead and scale this up. We're going to turn this transparency down. We're going to scoot this over, and we're going to focus in right about here. So, I mean, it's not rocket science. You probably don't need this, but just for quick proportions, we'll have this available. That's right, Fat Albert. I forgot. What else was back then? He-Man. I mean, this was, I remember I was more of like when I was watching most of my cartoons was in the early 90s. So Ninja Turtles, later on with X-Men, but like He-Man, like I was a little kid. I was born in 81. So I don't remember. It's just vague, very vague memories, and also the toys I had, in the backyard. Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but anyway. So as far as these shapes go, your first inclination is probably gonna be like, okay, let me grab a cone out of my primitives here, go into edit mode, and now you can just you basically got a pointy hat, right? And then if we go in here to polyframe mode, let's go ahead and go down here to initialize. You can get rid of some of these divides. Let's say 16 is fine on the H, but on the vertical, let's take that down to like nothing. And then let's make it a polymesh 3D so we can sculpt on it. I'm going to switch this out to skin shader or even flat color so we can really see that polyframe. So again, we basically got a hat, and then we're going to flop this back like so. I'm actually going to hold down, so this is a weird one. I'm going to hold down shift and start rotating and let go of shift, and I'll kind of pull it backwards. So this will end up flopping back. If we want to kind of just start dialing that in, we can go in here to our slice, and we can be like, hey, let me put a little, let me slice through here, and let me get that bottom piece here. Now you don't have to do this. Obviously his hat's the most obvious like cone shape, but it also looks like it kind of comes to a point at the front of his head. So we'll deal with that, but at least now we have the basics of this hat. Now, instead of doing this, you could go through here with your Z modeler brush, BZM, hover over an edge, insert multiple edge loops and just click and drag. And now you can just kind of divide this up real quick. Let's go ahead and hit Control W, make this all one polygroup. And then we can just go in here, hold down Control, Mask Lasso, and we'll grab this little top chunk, Control Tap to invert that. Actually, let's do this. Let's do Control Alt. That will unmask this, so you can skip a step. And now we can just start, you know, dialing in this shape. As far as where the brim flares out, if I do not Shift Z, boy, it's been a bit. What am I doing? Okay, Z, yeah, okay, it was Shift Z. Z to bring the widget back and forth, Shift Z to turn it on and off. I'm going to go through here with my ZRemesher brush. We're going to do insert multiple edge loops is fine. I'm going to hold down Alt and just tap and get rid of that bottom one. And now we can kind of flare out this bottom piece. I don't need this here, so I'm going to hold down Alt and just drag. And then we're going to Control Shift tap the blue part and then Geometry Modify Topology Delete Hidden. And we're going to give this thing some thickness. But we do want to flare this bottom out. So I'm going to hold, again, Control Alt, unmask all of these, hit W. Let's go to Unmask Mesh Center. And let's reset it, and then I'm going to hold down Alt and scale it along that axis. So basically what I'm doing is just kind of spreading this out. You could also do like a deformation inflate if you wanted to, like down here, deformation inflate. But that's what this is kind of built for, just holding down Alt and just kind of moving along, like scaling along that long axis. Now, if you want to see the other side of this, this is where you can go down here to like display properties, and double. And you can just turn that on temporarily. And of course we got our flat color. So here's your skin shaders. You can see it look a little bit better. And then we'll go ahead and turn on X symmetry and then hold down Shift. Oops. And then just kind of, wait, we're on the wrong axis. So if I turn my floor on, we look at the bottom here, Z forward is usually how you work. And then X is left to right. If you go in here to transform, that's how it's default set up. I was looking at the wrong side. No big deal. Just hold down Shift on the top and then just rotate it 90 degrees. And now we have X symmetry. I always like to do a Geometry Modify Topology mirror and weld across the X axis just to make sure everything's fine. And now I'm on the, and just, you know, so you know where it is. Geometry Modify Topology, mirror and weld across the X. That would just take care of, like, if I was just off a little bit and I did that, you would see like, oh no, I'm not perfectly symmetrical. And in that case, you could just nudge it over and then mirror and weld, or you could probably get away with geometry position and then just zero out that X. Sometimes that works. And then again, Geometry Modify Topology, mirror and weld. Okay, so we got our hat, and now I need to, you know, so, and again, the hat we're working on is perfectly like flat and to the side, right? But if I want to match this where he's like looking upwards, that's where I go into my camera, hold down Shift, start rotating and let go of Shift. And now we can kind of, you know, make sure that our hat is reasonably set up. And this is where we're going to go in here with our move brush and kind of nudge stuff around, etc. Okay. Yes. 80s cartoons, call them out. I need to remember. My brain's starting to go. He-Man, use that as your guide. I'm just going to look real quick. 80s cartoons. Ghostbusters. It has Ninja Turtle. Ewoks. Let's look. Transformers. Duh. Okay. Yeah, I should have got that one. Obviously Transformers. Obviously G.I. Joe. Voltron. I guess the Simpsons were technically 80s. They were 89 when they started. I don't really count the Simpsons until like season 3. That's my hot take for the day. Gem. Okay. Flintstones. That was earlier. Yeah, Flintstones and Jeffersons. Jetsons were, those felt like holdovers to me. A little before my time, but yeah, I still watched them a bit. What else we got in here? Thundercats. All right. She-Ra, He-Man and She-Ra. Yep. Beetlejuice wasn't 80s, was that? 89. Wow. Whew. Some of these things are older than I thought. Chippendale Rescue Rangers was 89? I mean, yeah, some okay, Care Bears. That was Punky Brewster, Care Bears, Scooby Doo was a previous to that, I think. Yeah. Anyway, I'm old. How about y'all? Yes, that's right. Every toy had the same mold. Um, yeah, you got them. You got them. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, a lot of the old Hanna-Barbera was like well before my time, but I still ended up, you know, just like I watched I Love Lucy and Three Stooges, which was in Little Rascals. But again, those were and MASH. all the all the stuff I ended up watching as a kid where I was like, why am I watching this? Um, but you know, it was good times. Okay, so we got our hat. Now we need to make a body. Same thing for the body. You could just do a cone, and then we could do the cloth stuff we're about to do, and then we got to put arms on it. But at the same time, we could probably get away with. Here's our hat. Okay, yeah, this is fine. As far as thickness, so we talked about, we could go in here with our ZModeler brush and say, you don't want to probably do a Q mesh polygroup all on this one, because on these interior things, it's gonna start doing some weird stuff with your mesh where it wants to stick together. In this instance, go in here and do a extrude polygroup all, and then you could pull down some thickness. In the meantime, though, if you wanted to have a thickness but didn't want to have real geometry and just kind of had a preview, let's go ahead and turn off double. Let's go down here to geometry dynamic, and we're going to turn this on. That's going to give us a smooth preview by default. We'll go ahead and turn smooth preview down to 0, and we're just going to turn up thickness. So that'll go ahead, and by default, it's kind of inflating out the thickness from like a midpoint. If we do an offset to -100, this outside will be the real geometry, and the fake geometry will be on the inside. So again, turn dynamic on or off, or then shift D and D to turn it on. So D to turn it on, shift D to turn it off. Also the smoothness, if you crank that up, that'll determine how this little edge here gets interpolated. And then also the interior geometry, you can see it kind of poking out. In fact, if we go down here to display properties double, you can see smoothness on kind of lets it relax outside of the mesh, which is what we don't want. So we'll go ahead and keep that smoothness at 0. Okay, now we need a body. We have a subtool. We have a character sheet. We have this. Let's go ahead and just say append something simple, a sphere. Grab a sphere, move it down, and then Shift Z to bring this back. And if I want to keep like not having to, let's use this one maybe. So we'll do like a 3-quarter. I mean, we could do all the views. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's do this. So we're going to turn this hat to the side. And again, we're going to hold down Shift and let go of Shift to start doing nothing but out here in your document, and then let go of Shift. That'll tilt it. And then we'll scale this down. And this will kind of be, we're going to store this. We're going to go into Movie, Timeline, Show. And then we're going to say, put a little dot in here. And then this one's fairly similar, just got his arms out. And then this 3-quarter one, we could rotate this around here. And then it doesn't have to be perfect because I don't know exactly how it's going to look and how we need to move this stuff around, but I'm going to put another dot in here. So now I can use my arrow keys to kind of go back and forth between those two. Okay, so Alt-tap the sphere if you don't have it selected already. Again, tap X on our keyboard to toggle on, activate symmetry in the X. And now we can just use our move brush. Again, we'll stuff this here. And you know what? Normally I wouldn't care that much, but so you can see how my brush size is kind of capped. I started out with just a primitive shape and just I'm working at an arbitrary size. What I could do is I'm going to go ahead and scale this down. What's a good way to scale that down quickly? Let's go into Z plugin, Scale Master, and you know what? Let's just do it the easy way. I'm going to do, actually I think Scale Master will work just fine. Let's do Scale Master. Let's do ZBrush Scale Unify. It's been a while since I've done this. There we go. And that'll make the bounding box for all of my subtools equal to a single unit here. So now these will kind of fit within a ZBrush unit, and now my brush size scale will be a little bit more compatible. That's a lot of words for not a lot of action, but now I got to go through here and reset. But this will just make it a little bit more comfortable with the default settings in ZBrush for their brushes. Let's go ahead and switch back to flat color, turn on polyframe here. So we'll go ahead and drag this dot out, put the dot back, and then we'll just set this camera up later. So again, we have our egg shape here. So let's go ahead and just continue to kind of do this. Now, if your image back here, if I turn Z, here's our little widget mode. Go in here to intensity. If your blacks are going to transparent, just try and crank that to the right, and that'll make your blacks dark gray and kind of get rid of that. Let's go ahead and turn that off and go back to opacity here. There we go. So now we've got our basic overall egg shape. And again, we'll flare this out. And we're not doing details just yet. We're just trying to get that body shape in the round. You know, he's a 3D character, right? So we're going to go to the front here, and we're going to need to kind of flare him out. So so we're looking from the front, but I think he's kind of the same from all sides. So I'm just going to, from the front, just kind of match that side view. So he's got little shoulders in here. He's got the bell here. So if I turn on polyframe again, we have our shape. And then out of this, he's got his turtleneck. Hold down Control Shift. We'll go in here to trim curve, and we're going to, we'll snap back to the side. We can go ahead and trim that bottom, or trim the top, and trim the bottom. And let's go ahead and just do a geometry modify topology mirror and weld. So it's the same on both sides, x-axis. So we got our overall shape, and in fact, we can use this top part too. So before we do anything, let's do a ZRemesh half, adapt to size down to 0, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0, ZRemesh, and just keep hitting that until it gets to something nice and easy. If you ever run into this where it's like there is something weird going on with this geometry in here, a lot of times if you go in here to geometry, modify topology, weld, you can weld points, and in fact, I might crank that weld distance up, or even turn this to a closed circle, and that'll really grab more points. So we'll go ahead and weld that up. So now when I do ZRemesh half, it'll give you a better result. You could also like ZRemesh half a couple times and then go in there and fix it. By the way, ZRemesh in your not custom menu. Go in here to ZRemesher, and again, we're doing half, what we're doing, half, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0, because when we sliced through, or when we did our trim, it already made the groups smooth. We don't need to make them smoother. And we're just trying to get simpler geometry to kind of manipulate, make it a little bit easier. The other cool thing about this is I can use this top part for my turtleneck. So if we duplicate this off and we isolate this, so just, you can go into solo mode, Control Shift tap this top part, geometry modify topology, delete hidden. And then we can go through here and we can say like extrude polygroup all. We can use this as a start of that little turtleneck thing. So that way we don't have to append a cylinder or anything. We can just utilize that. Oh yes, speaking of, thank you robot, learning ZBrush, I need to go through and update my 2025 and 2026, but for what it's worth, if you go to my ZBrush, if you go to my YouTube channel, I think, yeah, the home, just go down here to ZBrush What's New playlist, this intro to ZBrush new and updated. That's got all the basics in there. That'll kind of walk you through it. And on my art station, speaking of 80s, we got Garbage Pail Kids. We've got Ninja Turtles. Warhammer? That's not 80s, is it? That seems a little newer to me. We got any old stuff in here too? Mayor McCheese. Wait, that's not Mayor McCheese. That's Big Mac. Officer Big Mac? That's a little older than the 80s. I got some 80s stuff in here. That was Star Wars? That was 79. 70s. Yeah, so I got some stuff in here. Anyway, if you go to here and you go to ZBrush What's New, this is the ArtStation version of it, and you can go through here and it has more examples and it's maybe a little bit better organized. So I'll link you to this here too as well. Oh yeah, so let me see. Garbage Pail Kids, yes. That's got to be 80s, right? And then late 80s. And then I think that was 80s too. These little guys? I don't know. Maybe not. I have not gotten to a new 2026 yet. I've just barely, like literally like last night, I was playing around with the new, okay, one thing in my last live stream, preferences, asset directory, open directory is where you now put your own stuff. So if you go in here to like Lightbox and then brushes, here's all my custom brushes. So now when I hit the comma key and go to, here's the default Maxon Lightbox. If you go here to user brushes, this is where all your stuff is now. So again, and also your, speaking of preferences, asset directory, open directory, Z startup brush presets. So this is where, like, if you put your brushes in here, these will load up a ZBrush every time for your session. So now if I go into my brush menu here, now I've got my custom like IMM based primitives, and you can assign hotkeys to those. Alt EM, exactly. So anyway, now you can see when we did this original, if we scrub back through here, it's like, okay, this isn't like a perfect cylinder. If you wanted to, you could say Control Shift, hold on Control Shift, go in here to clip curve. And if you do it this way, you can actually clip this back to a flat surface here. So it is kind of a cylinder, more like a better cylinder extrusion. But even if it's not perfect, it's not a big deal, because you can always go through here, give yourself a decent working example, and then go in here to your deformation polish by feature and just tap that a few times, and that'll even out your geometry. Or if you want to go to polish by feature open circle and tap a few times, that'll really smooth it out. That of course is in your deformation polish by features closed circle or open circle. Closed circle to maintain your volumes a little bit better. And of course, if you want to, you can also say grab these caps. Let's hold down Control Shift, drag geometry modify topology, delete hidden, hover over an edge, close convex hole, and then you can just recap these. So we can just get rid of this one, delete hidden, recap, Control Shift Tab, Control W to make it all one polygroup. And then we could even go through here and do like, you know, inset polygroup all. You could inset both sides at the same time, and you can just keep doing that. Or like we did earlier, you could say insert multiple edge loops, go ahead and just give this some spans, go to the bottom, tap to give it the exact same. Again, just Control W. Let's make that a little more obvious, etc., etc. And then again, if you want to even it out, again, that's just a polish by feature. And then if you want to add more spans in here, insert multiple edge loops. There you go. Also do a group by normals. That's underneath your polygroup menu here. Group by normals, max angle 45. So when it gets to these major angles here, it'll go ahead and just re-polygroup everything based on normal angle threshold, which is nice. So Shift C, snap it back. I don't know what's going on in here, so let's do this. 80s cartoons, no. Orko with a dash, Orko without a dash. This is it's just kind of like, yeah, there's just kind of a shadow, right? He's a mysterious character. He's obviously blue. He's obviously a little bit wizardy. He's obviously a little bit pointy-eared, but not a whole lot else. So he's a little fancier in here. We'll stick with the old one. So we're just going to put a shape in there, just kind of placeholder shape. Of course, easy way to do that, you can just Alt tap in here. I'm going to go into my custom menu. Alt E is my hotkey for that. But you can also go to BI brush insert IMM primitives, hit M on your keyboard, or go up here and select. Just doesn't really matter. Just grab a sphere and just pull that out, like so. And then by default, it's still stuck to that subtool, right? But it's auto masking, so you can go through here really quickly and, like, you know, while it's masked, go through here and be like, okay, here's how his head should kind of be sitting in that turtleneck, right? But while I'm working, I want this to be a separate subtool. So while it's masked, you can go in here to split, unmask points, mask points, doesn't matter. And then now it's on its own subtool. So now I can go through here, and again, you can just Alt tap through to select, and then you can kind of go through here and be like, okay, There's my little mysterious head. And then for those eyeballs, oh, Mac and Me. Was that 80s? Maybe. Oh, is that what he's supposed to look like? Unmasked. So just basic eyes, right? So same thing for these. We can go back in here, and I'm going to use my custom menu. So we'll go like a 16 sphere, drag these out, say split mask points, W, we'll go ahead and scale along this axis. We'll push this back, and then let's go ahead and reset here. Go to Unmesh Mesh Center, and we'll kind of, I don't know, something like that. Those ears, same deal. I'm just going to stick with a sphere for now. And again, the topology doesn't really matter. We're going to go ahead and say split mask points, and then let's make them the right size. So we'll kind of put this down here. And now that we're starting to get a little bit more of those features, by the way, if you have like ears on either side and you start like wanting to scale these in or out, it's going to go to the middle axis. Go up here to LSIM, turn off dynamic, that little white letters, turn that off. And now you can scale on that local axis. So you can kind of do this. So what do ears look like? I'm gonna need to have both these character sheets up. Shoot. Hold on. Open image in new tab. Yes, one. Open image in new. Nope. Open image in new tab. Any other ones? I just like having quick and easy access to the images. Just off the screen, you don't see this, but there we go. Now, okay, got his eyeballs, got his ears. So ears are going to be just basic pointy. So you hold down Shift and Smooth, you can get the overall shape. If you don't want to be constrained by like geometry, this is where you can go in here and just do like a Dynamesh. So that's underneath your geometry, Dynamesh here. You can raise or lower the resolution. And again, if you're just blocking out volumes, you don't have to have a super high resolution. If you want to move objects through another object, you can go in here to transparency, turn on ghost, and that'll make it really easy. You can kind of see where things are positioned, but it won't stop you from doing what you need to do. Also, another thing, ZBrush insert, like IMM tune, go in here and hit M or go up here and search. And I want to say like there's basic, like here's an elf ear shape. But also if you want to say like ZBrush insert IMM parts, just grab an ear and then we can just modify this ear. So for example, we can say, you know what, let's delete that. And then we'll just drag an ear out. We'll say split mask points, rotate this around. So now we got a little bit more ear detail, which he does have. It's an ear that's kind of elfish. So we'll kind of make this, we could also stick this to his head too. I'll show you do that in just a second, but just to keep us honest, we'll go ahead and say, okay, this ear needs to be attached kind of to his head-ish. So we'll go ahead and we'll just lightly modify this ear to be a little bit pointy. Save us some time. Okay, and then Shift Z, we'll snap this back here, move this forward a little bit, make it vaguely the right size. Again, use Shift to smooth, or if you want to pull to a really sharp point, you can use your move brush with, if we go back here to our brush, curve, turn on AccuCurve for your move brush, and that will allow you to kind of pull to a little bit sharper points. It gives you just a little bit more control, as opposed to that soft rounded fall off. And yeah, something like that. Okay, so this will be straight, this will be curved, and we'll go through there and we'll sculpt that to be a little bit something like this. Okay, so we got this, we got this. Okay, we got to add some arms. So let's say Shift Z, let's go back here. you know what? We'll stick with what's working. We'll grab another sphere. We're going to alt tap the body just because that's what we're going to be dragging on. You don't have to, but we'll go ahead and say split mask points. This is across the x-axis here. And then we can just go through here. We'll just like scale this out, rotate it around, and we've got our basic arm shape. So we'll go ahead and put in a little indication of an elbow, and we'll kind of flare out the bottom here. And again, you can see I'm overshooting the bounds because we know we can just trim that off. No big deal. So we've got this here. Let's go ahead and hold down Control Shift. We'll go in here to trim curve right along the bottom here. And we'll go ahead and thin this out. It's got kind of spindly arms-ish. And then we're going to reverse engineer his body in there, and we'll make that all one contiguous mesh, I suppose. We don't have to, obviously, but if you're going to rig and animate this thing and you're going to unmask him at any point, having that set up is probably a good idea. Okay, so we've got the arms here. And again, if you're really concerned, or you, I don't know, at this point, you want to go through here. Again, this is just whatever geometry, who cares? This is whatever geometry, who cares? But you can go in here to like ZRemesh half. Again, adaptive size down to 0. We want nice even quads, and the lower that adaptive size is, the better for even quads. It's not going to build in extra geometry, which is sometimes useful, sometimes not. Keep groups, ZRemesh, and that'll just go ahead and give us new geometry. A little bit easier to manipulate maybe. And then again, if you want to recap these, no biggie. Just geometry modify topology, delete hidden, and then close convex hole. Now, this turtleneck, body, ears, hat, hands. That's another BI brush insert. If you want to use like toon hands, it's got, you know, just basic hand shapes. I think 1, 2, 3. Looks like he's got 3 fingers. I'm going to go, I mean, doesn't really matter. I can make more or less fingers, but we're just going to go ahead and grab these more realistic hands. Pull these out. We're going to say split mask points. Let's go back here. Let's make sure it's positioned about where we would think, give or take, right size, give or take. We can always massage later. And now, that does seem a little bit big. Same deal here. LSIM is turned on so we can scale on that local axis. And then again, if we want to like make this, is it 1, 2, 3 fingers? Yeah, looks like 3 fingers on one hand. No big deal. So this has an open hole in the back. We can go through here. Let's hold down Control Shift. Let's switch over to a select lasso. We're just going to hit that knuckle right there. Geometry modify topology, delete hidden. We'll do an auto groups, poly groups, auto groups. It does it across an axis. So we're going to go ahead and do, if we do a mirror and weld across the X, it'll take this poly group and move it over here, which in this case is fine. Control Shift tap this main poly group, geometry modify topology, delete hidden. And that's a really clean way to do this. So if you wanted to go through here and then say, okay, let's go ahead and say close that convex hole, Control W, and that basically gave you quads, right? So if you really wanted to clean this up, you could say like delete edge and go through here and just, oh no, go through here and crash ZBrush. You could go through here and re-quad that up. This was just a way, if you didn't want to have to like ZRemesh something, you could do this, but let's see if that comes back. Comments. Hello, Violet. Let's see. Also, if you guys have any questions while I'm doing this, please shout them out. And I apologize for my voice. Whenever I do first thing in the morning, I'm always like, you can hear me just trying to stay alive. Yeah, I'm 44. I think somewhere around there. Okay, what happened here? Alt tab. Come on, come back. Let's see. I mean, it's still like responding. Like, is it actually crashed, or it's like kind of half responding? hold on. And also, while you're doing this, like, go ahead and do your quick saves, which I've been moving a lot, although I've been going longer than 20 minutes, so it should have done a quick save for me. ZBrush executable. Let me see. Okay. Well, I guess I can kill the process. It just seems like it's still kind of working, kind of not, though. I did delete an edge. All right. End task. Shoot. Let's see what it saved. If it didn't save, I'm gonna just go through really quickly and not explain what I'm doing and just kind of, because there's a million different ways you could do this. Like, instead of doing our, you know, primitive ZRemesh way, you can go through here and just do really fast. Okay, good. So we'll grab the latest Z project. Okay, so real quick, I'm just gonna go through here and get us back up to speed. So we'll say split mask points, and here's our head, and then we'll go through here and we'll add the ear, like so. And get rid of that align cursor to surface. And again, like I said, while you're working, if you hit that 9 key, I think is quick save. Yeah, just hit 9. Or you can go into your preferences and say, you know, do a quick save, especially when you're doing like just block out work. You know, you can do a quick save like every minute and it's not going to slow you down because the saves, it's not like you're working with like a 100 million polygon mesh. It's going to take a minute to save. Feel free. But like I said, we'll get back up to speed real quick. Oops, split mask points, and oh, that's the other thing too. I didn't save my. Okay, texture, import, desktop. Yes, texture. Can't be in an IMM brush to do this. Texture, select, add, scale, opacity. Here. Okay, and then we got this. Ear, here. Arm, which we already talked about. Control Shift, trim curve, slice, and I don't even need to look at it. I can just say ZRemesh half, depth size 0, blah, blah, blah. And then this I don't think was quite updated, but again, easy enough. Insert. We can do a single edge loop or multiple edge loops. Even this you could do like a ZRemesh half, you know, or ZRemesh same, get better geometry a little bit maybe. Deformation, polish by feature a little bit, recap if you want. In this case, it's not super necessary, so I'll just skip that part. And then one more, we'll go ahead and grab those hands. Split mask points, and then here we'll go ahead and set this local sim dynamic off, thin that out a little bit. And then for like a T-pose, I mean, we don't want to do a T-pose, but like a nice relaxed A-pose, we can always rotate the hands around. And again, we're going to reverse engineer a body underneath here. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But I don't know, something like this. And then again, now instead of doing what we were doing was a very controlled, precise way to kind of modify this geometry and keep it kind of the same, but just working with 3 fingers. You could be a little bit more haphazard. So you can go through here and just say, close holes, geometry, modify topology, close holes. I always like to do a quick mirror and weld. And then you could even, if you do a Dynamesh at this point, you want to make sure your resolution is turned up enough. If it's too low, it'll start merging things together. So, you know, give yourself some resolution. And then you could even go through here, hold down Shift, turn on Sculptris Pro, and you could start eating away some of this geometry if you wanted to. Or, you know, like normal, hold down Control Shift, go in here to select lasso, hold down Alt, and then hide the geometry, geometry modify topology, delete hidden, Control drag to re-Dynamesh, or do another close hole operation, hit Control W if you want. So you don't have to work very controlled or precise or anything like that with geometry. You can just go through here, and let's go through here and do a quick inflate on this pinky here, and then we're gonna move this here. Let's do an inflate here just to kind of even these out. So now we've got a basic hand, kind of a spindly hand shape like so. Now at this point, if you did want to ZRemesh to give yourself something nicer to work with, Control Shift, let's go in here, we'll do another trim. We'll trim the back of that hand off, Control Shift tap just that green part, delete hidden. If you had nice details here that you had sculpted, you can Control tap the latest point in history to store those vert positions, and then as you're, you know, guess I didn't have symmetry on. That's fine. We can always mirror it over. Let's turn symmetry off. Oh, you know what? Maybe when I did in auto groups, I just grabbed one side. I'm on one side now, so we're going to say ZRemesh half, depth size down to 0. We'll just ZRemesh this result, get us some new geometry. And then, like I said, if you wanted to like do a subtool project to your stored history points, you can just say project history. That'll kind of project back to what you had in your stored data. But we don't really need that. And again, let's do a ZRemesh half. That's fine. And then we'll just do a little quick cap, close, convex hole is what I'm always looking for. There we go. And then we'll put a little span in here. So we're kind of back where we started, only we went the Dynamesh route. Totally legal. No one will yell at you. Do a quick mirror and weld. Let's turn LSIM off, because if you have LSIM turned on, obviously it's going to want to mirror and weld across the bounding box for that single object. So we'll turn that off. We'll do mirror and weld across an x-axis, turn X back on, and now we've got hands going. We've got our thing, and then of course we'll hit 9. Quick save. Okay, so now reverse engineering. Let's go in here. We've got a head shape here. That ear does need to be attached, right? So this ear, that head, this hand, and some semblance of a body in there. So what we can do is we can turn off the hat. So I'm going to Alt tap the hat. We're going to turn that off. And then everything else can kind of be a body. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and say merge visible. And it's not going to do anything to your subtools. It's going to throw a little merged version of him out here. I'm going to go ahead and append this back into my stack here. And now if I go into solo mode, all of these subtools have been merged. They're still separate. So you can just still go through here, do Control Shift A to visibility, grow all, Control Shift drag to invert that visibility. So you still have access. Or if you want to go in here to your move brush, turn on auto masking, turn on topological, or BM move topological BMT. That'll allow you to go through here. Let's turn on X symmetry, or we can also do a mirror and weld. Make sure it's all, you know, the same on both sides. So you can go through here even when everything is merged and just kind of move things separately. And since these are different polygroups, you could also use mask by polygroups up to 100 if you wanted. So yeah, so here's what I'm going to do. So for his little weirdo body, I shouldn't say that. For his whatever thing he's got going on underneath these robes, I'm going to hold down Shift and just kind of smooth this back a little bit. I'm going to assume he's got baggy clothes on, and he's not, it didn't seem like it was super form-fitting. So I'm just going to kind of start dialing in the volumes for his body here. And again, these are all still, they're all combined as subtools, but they're all still separate technically. They're not vert welded. So now we can, and then again, his neck, again, this is his turtleneck, which we can go ahead and just Control Shift drag, we'll say delete hidden. There we go. So something like this. Oops, looks like I left this piece here. Delete hidden. Geometry modified topology. Is this both the same? Really? That was the same polygroup? How is that even possible? Goodness gracious. Okay, so some sort of a neck, some sort of a head. The ears, let me look. The ears look I'm probably have to, when I go to this 3/4 view, I'll redetermine this because this looks like it's not going to work that well. Also, I like to work with close message, so I'm going to do a quick close holes, geometry, modify, topology, mirror, and weld. And now I'm just going to kind of fudge. I'll leave the ears there. I can also mask, and so if you don't want to move topological, we'll go ahead and turn that off for our move brush. I'm going to isolate this, mask, control tap in our canvas, control shift tap to bring everything else back, control tap to invert that mask. And now I can go through here and be like, okay, this is our head underneath. Now it's kind of attached to our ear. And now we have basically our body. Now, if we want to start sculpting this a little bit, let's give ourselves a little bit of space here. So we'll hit W, control drag down. That'll auto mask, but by default now, ZBrush does a very soft mask. If you want to make it a little bit harsher, turn this off here. Hit 9 to quick save. BT Classic. BTC is transpose classic. So now when I control drag down, that'll auto mask, and that'll just make it easier. And it's a little bit sharper of a mask to go through here. And we can like spread these fingers out because we're gonna, I guess we don't have to Dynamesh. We could do a Boolean if you wanted to. Let's show you both. So if I want to Dynamesh this together, obviously you can go in here to your Dynamesh. So that's geometry, Dynamesh here, that button. So go in here and Dynamesh, and now everything's all stuck together. And now you can go through here. If we turn off polyframe, and we'll turn on this. So now, hold on, shift. I don't have smooth stronger turned on, do I? Smooth brush modifiers, yeah. I'm gonna turn my weighted smooth mode to 1. That'll just make smoothing a little bit easier at these resolutions. And now everything's stuck together, right? Alternatively, if you wanted, you could hit W. I'm gonna go out of X symmetry, go to unmask mesh center. And then John, you might have messaged me about this. Sometimes if you have X symmetry turned on and you do this, where you go through here, and you do remesh by union, that runs a Boolean operation. So basically, and again, if you want to know more about, like, go in depth on this type of thing. Sorry, I gotta get my windows in order here. Like I said, my YouTube channel, actually just type in remesh by union. There you go. So here's, I know I've talked about this more than that. Anyway, there's Boolean, and this also goes into like the subtool Booleans, Boolean operations and stuff like that you can do. But essentially what it does is it doesn't change the geometry. It just makes these all basically watertight. Now, if you were to go to 3D print this, you would grab a little piece of this, Control Shift A to contiguous, grow all contiguous verts, all the verts that are stuck together. And then if we Control Shift drag, sometimes there will be like little floating pieces every once in a while that'll kind of make ZRemesher act weird. So that's why I always like to do grab a little piece, Control Shift A, and then geometry, modify, topology, delete hidden. In this case, it did a very clean job. This is useful if you wanted to like keep your polygroups and then like do a ZRemesh half, tap size down to 0, and use your polygroups to kind of dictate. Oops, let's go ahead and turn on X symmetry. Use your polygroups to kind of dictate where your geometry goes. In this case, not overly useful, but I just wanted to show you that option. Also, if you wanted to, again, skip Dynamesh, you can just go up here to Sculptors Pro, and then you can just tessellate on the fly. So instead of, doing everything Dynamesh, you can just go through here and kind of spot Dynamesh, if that makes sense, like a spot check. You can go through here and just add geometry where you need it. For our purposes, let's go ahead and, what did we do? What did I do here? Did I seriously like move him at an angle? Why would I do that? Okay, so I'm gonna fix that real quick. Because yeah, I should have just been using the camera, but apparently I didn't. It's an easy fix. So let's go ahead and turn his hat back on. Let's go in here to move multiple subtools. I'm just gonna rotate this back so he's, kind of world center forward, normal. And then I got to turn my movie thing back on, because as soon as I do that, let's see, Shift Z, W. Let's go ahead and turn move multiple off. If I go back here and use my arrow keys, it's going to make him. So this is where he's normal. And now I don't know why. What happened there? Anyway. Okay, so we have a body underneath here, which means when I turn everything else back on, so we were just like isolated. You can hold down shift and turn off the eyeball and just isolate it down to here, or go in here to solo mode. We just have the body, but now we have some extraneous subtools we don't need anymore. So here is my body mesh. We'll hit Control W, we'll make it all one polygroup. So we don't need this hand subtool anymore. We'll go ahead and delete that. We don't need this extra ear subtool only. We'll go ahead and delete that. And we don't need this extra head subtool anymore. We'll go ahead and delete that. Yeah, okay. So like I said, we'll go ahead and, yes, turn off the floor. We'll go ahead and dynamesh this. Resolution 128 is probably fine. Hold down shift to smooth. Oh, and I forgot one thing. I need to add his eyeballs. No big deal. And again, if we want to see his body underneath the clothes, that's where we can go in here to transparency, or even transparency ghost if we want to move his body underneath a little bit easier. That should work fine. Okay. And then one more thing. Let's go ahead and grab a sphere, drag off split mask points, scale, rotate. We'll turn LSIM back on. They're not really that elongated. Okay. That's a separate piece. These two here are combined into one like garment. So we can go ahead and, let's go ahead and start refining. So we've got enough information here. So if I do Shift Z, we've got this back view here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this intensity up a little bit so that the dark blacks go to dark grays so they don't turn transparent. And then I'm going to go ahead and, so we got this stored here. I'm going to move him over here, and then we're going to kind of rotate him to kind of match this 3/4 angle. And again, and you could do multiple too if you want to be, okay, I'm going to match his body for this one. You can put in a little dot here, and then I'm going to match his head. So I'm going to rotate him back a little bit because he's kind of looking up here. And we want to match like, here's the middle of his face here. His hat looks like it might be a little longer. But anyway, I'm really more concerned about like ears and hat relationship, but something like this. We can put another dot in here. So now we can kind of step through that. Let's see. Questions. Hey, Aram. Pavlo, watching everything you said about hard surface for 2 days straight now. It's been a while since I've done sat down and done a hard surface thing. I should do more of that. There's some really cool robot stuff. Yeah, I don't really do content anymore, at least not traditional content, but I'd like to get back into it. Every month I say that for a whole year now. I've been like, I'm going to get back into content, and I am doing content, but it's more, it's more like end-to-end node-based content than it is like sit down and make something content, but I'll get back to it. You always want to sit down and do, go in there and hand do stuff. Yeah, that's a good point. So when we go through my, and also if you want to say preferences, screensaver, you can turn screensaver off and save that in config. So if you're on the YouTube channel and you're learning ZBrush, you're down here in ZBrush What's New, these are more like, there are some project-y type things kind of scrolled away in some of these tutorial videos, but for the real project-based tutorials, that's more of the live stream stuff, and I think that'll be easier. I got like a live stream section here you can go to, or even in the ZBrush What's New, I'll usually pack the live streams along with the tutorial series sometimes. But anyway, live streams are in here. Presentations too. I got some ZBrush presentations. Yeah, and most of them are still relevant. They haven't, not as of this recording, they haven't changed really foundational stuff. So you could still get some good stuff out of those. Yeah, so when, like I was talking with John, yeah, when you do that remesh by Boolean, I don't know if I finished that thought, turn off, let's see, transform, expose, turn off, so if you wanted to like merge these and Boolean them, turn off X symmetry before you do that, and then go in here and remesh by union, and then turn your symmetry back on, and it shouldn't do anything weird. So anyway, really quickly, we'll go ahead and make his body fit, and then we'll alt tab his arm here. Now, again, if I want to make clothes, if I was to like merge these together now, we'd have a hard time. So what I'm going to need to do is move these arms out, give us a little breathing room in those armpits, and then same thing for his body. Now that his body's separate, I probably should have done this before, but now I have to go through here with his body mesh and do the exact same thing. So, and again, you don't, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing like a 3D print thing and you're never going to like see the body underneath, there's probably not a real compelling reason to add one. I always like to play it safe and just have a working body underneath, depending on what I plan on. Most characters you usually do, so it's not like it's a real unsafe thing to do. But in these instances here, let's go ahead and hold down Shift, turn our Z intensity down a little bit. It may or may not make sense to have a body underneath. You can just have a separate hand subtool and call it a day. Okay, so now we've got a little bit more space under that armpit there. So now if I want to make this all one piece of clothing, like his, again, just to remind you, he's got, it's just a cloak. It's basically just a long sleeve t-shirt. So if we want to make this all one thing, again, I don't know where these subtools are in space, and I don't feel like organizing my subtools just for this. So I'm going to hold down Shift, bent down arrow, Alt tap this one, Shift, bent down arrow. Now they're both at the bottom. Now I know I can go through here and say merge down. Now they're all one subtool, and the coolest thing is they have our polygroups right where we want them. So this is a really good example of X symmetry off, go in here and do a remesh by union. Now we got really nice polygroups where we want them. And again, it's, you know, really smooth. It's not like, because if we dynamesh this right now, ZRemesher is going to want to build in all of this aliasing, right? And that's not what we want. However, if we just remesh by union, and I always like to do a quick mirror and weld. Now if we do like ZRemesh same, keep group, smooth groups down to 0, it'll ZRemesh these together, but use your polygroups here. We need a little bit more geometry than that. Let's do double. There we go. In fact, let's turn off double and let's do like target polygon count of like 3K. So now we have, and this geometry is not great. We can go through here and we can massage it a little bit. And like I said, sometimes when you do a Boolean operation, that geometry gets really gross. So this is where geometry modified topology mirror and weld, or geometry modified topology weld with our weld distance up, and even like closed circle, just to grab as many points as you can, and that'll like merge some of this nasty geometry in here. Let's really crank that up. There we go. That grabbed it. I saw it. There we go. So now this is a little bit nicer. And again, we can ZRemesh as many times as we want. We're not stuck with this. We're just trying to get slightly nicer working geometry. And you don't have to stick with it either. You can go through here and start with your ZModeler brush. We can say like collapse edge, or even go in here with your retopo brush, your new retopo brush, and like edit this geometry if you wanted to. But there you go. Now we've got, this is all one piece here. And now we can start, wait a minute. Yeah, he's a little bit, I don't think he'd be that barrel chested. Let's go ahead and turn on transparency ghost here. And then just for fun, now that we kind of got like a little goblin body underneath here, let's go ahead and turn our Z intensity back up. And again, this is our ZRemesh body here. So we'll go ahead and we can start kind of refining this. His face is just blank, but now we can go through here with our our standard brush, our clay build-up brush, clay tubes, or whatever is most effective for you, and we can start dialing in like a little bit of features here. So we'll go ahead and add a semblance of a brow, and this will make it so that if we need to like animate his face or anything like that, there's something there. So again, we'll go to clay tubes, clay brush, and then you guessed it, when we're done with this, we're going to ZRemesh it, give ourselves a little bit nicer geometry to work with, and then we'll take it to final. But while you're just kind of mushing things around, this is where Dynamesh can kind of sometimes be nice. We'll go ahead and move this up here, and we'll scoot these around. And then as far as the cloth and the wrinkles go, you can just sculpt them, or you can sculpt them and do cloth simulation. Oops, do a quick mirror and weld. As I was mushing around, let's do a quick mirror and weld across the x-axis. Let's do a quick ZRemesh same. There we go. And then make sure you turn X, tap X to go back into X symmetry there. Okay, Shift Z. Let's make sure everything's about right. And at this point, it's really just refining, going through here and making sure everything is about what you'd expect. Making sure. Okay, X symmetry's turned on. You can hit the down arrow key to go through your subtools and just make sure that X symmetry is turned on for all of them. Yes, and it looks like we inadvertently have a thing going back here. I'm going to do a quick polish by feature just to even that out. And what else? Okay. Now, this here, he's got kind of like a really wrinkly turtleneck thing going on here. So we're going to need more geometry to represent that. What we can do is we can first, let's go ahead and I want to maintain that volume he has there. So right now, if we try to sculpt on this, obviously we're not going to get very far. There's just no points here to manipulate. But if we want to, we can go in here to geometry. If we want to keep this creased, we can say crease PG. So now if we were to go through here and hit Control D to subdivide, it'll maintain that edge a little bit better. If we don't have that crease and we hit Control D, that'll just kind of soften it. In this case, it's not a huge deal, but just for now, I'm going to say crease PG. I'm going to hit Control D a couple times. We already got nice even geo. I'm not worried about it. We could recap those like we did earlier in the video, but I think we're fine. And then I'm going to hit W. We're going to go to, let's turn off X symmetry, go to Unmesh Mesh Center. We'll make it, hold down Alt and kind of fit this. We'll tap X again. Now, if we scale this now, it's just going to obviously scale up and down, right? However, if we go to B, T, A, which is transpose cloth, now it'll kind of want to manipulate this as like a cloth object. So we can kind of stretch this out. It's going to want to maintain those vert relationships. So it's not going to want to stretch them too much. It's not going to want to compress them too much. If you do compress them, it's going to want to, again, maintain volumes. If you stretch it too much, it's going to want to kind of do that. So this is where you can kind of go through here and kind of get some cloth rings going. And then if you want to, again, BTC is brush transpose classic. And now you can go through here and just kind of rescale it out without having that cloth transform get in your way. Let's go ahead and turn that hat off because I need to see in here his turtleneck, you know, is probably something like this. But now his head's going through the back. I got some real head problem, ear problems here. So let's go ahead and play around with that. I don't hate where that's going. Oh, another thing too is when you're sculpting on a thin object like this, and you're like sculpting, and then you re-Dynamesh, and you're like, oh no, it's because your brush is going through the mesh. If you want to stop that, that's where that backface masking comes in. So while you're on it's per brush. So you can go in here and you can turn on brush, auto masking, backface mask. I have a hotkey for that, Alt F. I can toggle that. I thought I did. Let's make one. Control Alt, Alt F. So now I can toggle that on and off. So I don't even need to see this. You know, here's my brush settings. I can just look over here really quickly in my custom menu and then say Alt F, then Control Drag. So if I need to like fix this, this is an easy one. I can just go through here and inflate and then redrag. And then while I'm sculpting with a brush, I can make sure backface masking is on so it doesn't pull through the mesh here. So we'll go through here and we'll say, okay, let's get our Damien standard brush here. And we'll kind of have this pull through and then inflate. And let's turn that Z intensity up just a little bit. I'm going to tap L to turn lazy radius off, which is on by default for our standard brush. And like I said, we got kind of a brow. I'm going to put a little, I don't know that he ever really moves his mouth. It just kind of moves that turtleneck in front of him. But if you wanted to, you could go through here and start, you know, dialing in maybe a little indication of a nose and a chin, just to give yourself something to put your rig, you know, position your bones against. And again, we can, let's see, let's hold down Control. Let's go in here to Mask Lasso, invert that. Again, go out of the X symmetry here, and then turn X symmetry back on. Hold down Alt, and we can kind of scale this in. And that'll give us a little bit more of a neck. And then we'll do a quick inflate here. And again, this doesn't need to be, if you're never going to see it, don't waste your time. But while we're in here, and just in case, we'll kind of start making sure at least he has volumes where they need to go, right? So standard brush, we'll go right down the middle of the back here for his little spine. We bump that out a little bit here, maybe a little lats. Got to have his deltoids here. It's been a long time since I sat down and made a character, like made one. Maybe I'll get back into it. So a little bit of a rib cage. And then this is just like a noodle arm. So we'll go ahead and make this, put a little bend. And again, you don't need much. You just need little indications of like, okay, here's the elbow. Here's the forearm. Here's the hand. And I'm going to overinflate the fingers for now because I know when I go in here and ZRemesh, these things are just going to disappear. So I'm going to give it a little too much here to work with. And then when I go through and thin it down, it'll be fine. So let's say this is what we want. We could go through and we could, actually going to inflate this up too. Z intensity down. Whenever you're working with a higher res mesh, you can have your Z intensity up, but then when you go to your lower res mesh, you can hold down Shift and again just turn your Z intensity down so it's not quite as abrasive. And then hold down Shift. I'm going to turn everything else off and then turn everything back on. And then yeah, it's about the right size. And then I'm just going to kind of eyeball this. Let me move this up. Move this in front. There we go. Let's see. You explain UV cage. Oh, is that the... That would be geometry. I know there's a geometry cage, the subdivision cage. Placement of the base verts. I haven't had to deal with that And then is there a... I'm not sure. I remember way back in the, I want to say early, mid 2000s, cages were a big deal, or some workflows where you needed to like, you couldn't move your base verts because it would, when you subdivide a mesh, your base verts would kind of melt a little bit, but depending on your pipeline, you needed those to stay the same. So I want to say a cage is what kept your base verts from shifting, if I'm not mistaken. But again, I never really had to deal with that because I always had, I never really had like my base geometry be my subdivision level 1 that much. It was always a arbitrary mesh later on for game development pipeline stuff, so I didn't have to deal with that. But I believe that's what geometry subdivision cage does, is it keeps your subdivision level 1 from shifting or melting, if that makes sense. But UV cage, I'm not sure. I don't remember that one. New UI, they teased it, didn't they? They teased it in the ZBrush Summit, the iPad kind of thing. I'm not sure exactly when that's rolling out, but looking forward to it. Let's see, make sure I get caught up here. Yeah, Dynamesh can really kind of melt your fingers and not give you what you're really working for. If my Kratos body parts are separated and there's a thin between them, so during bake I'll see seams, black line, and substance. Oh, yeah. Let me think. That might be a padding issue, although by default it usually has like infinite dilation. I don't have substance on this machine, I don't think. Yeah, I don't have Substance Painter on here. Yeah, when you bake, yeah, so you have your body, and then you have your low-res mesh, and then you have your UVs, and those are obviously going to be split on seams. When you bake, it should give you some padding. Although even if, I mean, if you're baking at like 2048 or 4096, you're probably not going to see like MIP mapping, you know, separation there. But it's when, but you do want to definitely give yourself some padding for like normal maps at the very least. Yeah, I guess check your padding, your dilation, but it should, by default, it should be set to infinite or higher than some. It shouldn't be giving you issues. Yeah, especially if you're baking in Substance. That I'm not sure about. When I scale an object from default size to real life scale, then I got jitter artifact kind of effect on the object. I want to say, get something to drink here. So, not transform Z plugin. Underneath Scale Master, it should, so like when we did our ZBrush Scale Unify, it made everything like compatible kind of with ZBrush's default brush settings and stuff like that. However, when you go in here and you make it a real scale, like if you wanted to make this 100 meters or something, it should maintain, like, it shouldn't mess up anything too bad. I'm trying to think what you could do if you're working on just single object or a group of objects. You could do this with an FBX, but like if you work, well, we did this with like when I work with like Marvelous Designer and you bring in like an avatar and they're on millimeters and it comes in like super huge or super small, it should underneath. I hate scale in ZBrush. Geometry, size. You know what? This will explain it better than I ever could, apparently. My brain's mush. Scale Master, click this video. It opens this, which doesn't work anymore, but maybe if I copy this, let's see if it still has this video up. Yeah. This should like using Scale Master to scale, it should do it in a safe way that doesn't introduce like what you're saying, which is sometimes when ZBrush makes very, very super small objects or gigantic, super huge objects, like you said, you'll get kind of like your verts will start jittering or start introduce. It'll almost, I'll show you what it looks like. It'll look something like, noise. I don't ever use this, so I'm having a hard time saying it. There we go. It'll kind of start looking like this, you know, where it just starts, again, jittering your mesh. Yeah, so you should be able to do like a ZBrush Scale Unify and then use like Scale Master to make ZBrush. It's not like changing the scale in ZBrush at all. It's actually changing your export settings. So if you go in here to Geometry, Export, here it is. If you go in here, this scale factor will be like 900 or 0.0002 or something like that. This is what it's only changing this value. It's not actually changing the size of your object, if that makes sense. So that should help you. That Scale Master should help you from having to actually scale your object, if that makes sense. Also, when you import an object, it should do that too. So if you import like a Marvelous Designer avatar object and it's whatever scale, it should still work perfectly fine within ZBrush. However, if you go in here to Tool, Export, this number will be changed. Yeah. Give that a shot. Yeah, if you started a project, and again, if you're not working at any particular scale, at any point, you can just go in here to Scale Master and then just do ZBrush Scale Unify, and that'll just kind of make everything fit within the bounding box of a ZBrush cube. So in that case, you're kind of working at ZBrush's native scale, and all your brushes and stuff will work fine, hopefully. So we got our body in here really quick. If you wanted to control this a little bit better, like if you're going to go through here and want to do like concentric rings, we can go through here really quickly and we can say, let's turn on polyframe transparency with ghost turned on. And we can say, okay, I want a concentric ring here. Let's do mask pin. So like here, and I'll hit Control W, make that. Back here with our ears, we could say Control Shift. Let's do select lasso. So you can go through here and we can start making polygroups. And the reason I'm doing this is so that when we ZRemesh, we're dictating where our edge loops go. Oops, hold down Control Shift and then Alt here. So we'll say Control W for this part of the ear. And then on the arms and stuff, we'll say, yeah, here. And then if you want to also you do like a slice, say slice through here and here. Now, if you know, the slice only worked on one side, that's when you can go into deformation, mirror across the X, and then geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld across the X. And then also we could do this. Now, while I'm doing this, you're seeing I'm getting some very jagged geometry edge borders. We'll fix that in just a second, but you definitely don't want to like run a ZRemesh with those still there because it'll do a bad job. Or it'll try to build in the aliasing that you're telling it to build in, when in reality you don't want it to do that. So how you avoid that is a couple different ways. You could, when you ZRemesh this, geometry, ZRemesher, so we want to get new geometry, and also the bottom's fine, but maybe the neck. Yeah, usually you want like, you know, hey, I got top of the neck and bottom of the neck or whatever. So you can go in here to ZRemesher, and instead of turning smooth groups down to 0, you could keep it up at like 1, and then when you have keep groups turned on in ZRemesh, it'll go ahead and smooth those border transitions for you and give you a decent result. And if you don't have any details sculpted or anything like that, that's probably your best bet. So in this case, we could do like half, ZRemesh half, keep groups, smooth groups up, and then, yeah, just keep hitting ZRemesh, and then I'll give you a new geometry based on that. You'll see your fingers start disappearing, and I can show you a way around that in just a second. However, you could also go through here and you could do like a masking, and we'll say mask are group borders, and I'm going to grow that mask a little bit, Control Tap to invert that, and then we'll go in here to our deformation polish by feature, close circle to maintain our volumes, just tap that a few times, and that'll smooth out those polygroup borders. So now if I say ZRemesher, we'll keep smooth groups down at 0, but they've been pre-smoothed, so now you don't have to have it set. Now, if I again continue to hit ZRemesh half, my fingers are going to start disappearing. In this case, they're okay, but if I keep stressing it, they're going to eventually disappear. To avoid that, you can go in here to, and also like if your face geometry starts disappearing and you want to keep that a little bit higher, that's where you can go in here to ZRemesher, use poly paint. And by default, I don't have poly paint turned on, so we got to turn on that little paintbrush icon there. It's just white painted on the verts, but if I go down here to use poly paint, the color density is set by 2 at default. That gives me a pink color. So now if I go in here with like BPA, which is my standard brush with RGB turned on, now we can go through here and we can paint where I want 2x density. And you can also do half, so if you want to do like half density, say 0.5, that'll make it a blue color, and then you can just paint where you want less density. So now when I say use poly paint, I've painted where I want to keep my geometry, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0, half, ZRemesh. Now it'll keep this a little bit higher res and then reduce the rest of your mesh. Anyway, here's our updated mesh here. So now as we start subdividing and refining, we got a little bit more controlled, predictable geometry. And again, I overinflated the fingers for ZRemeshing purposes. So now I can go through here and I can smooth that out and make those fingers a little more spindly. So Control D to subdivide, add a subdivision. But before we do that, you can go through here and do like if you got any weird geometry or do a little cleanup pass. Let's turn that Z intensity down on that move brush, geez. Like with your, like I said, with Z modeler or anything like that, you can go through here and that's not terrible. I could live with that. Yeah, that's fine. Not great, but again, just for like, and again, this isn't going to be like our final game res or anything like that. It's more of a just having more predictable geometry when we're using our doing our high res sculpt. So we'll just go ahead and hit Control D. Let's go ahead and get rid of that color here, and then go back in here to inflate. And now instead of using Dynamesh, we're subdividing. And again, we're not doing anything crazy. Like we're not going through here and like making huge changes that we'd have to ZRemesh again. We're just refining, so we should be in good shape. But you saw how easy it is to like store your vert positions, ZRemesh, project back to your vert positions. So you should never be afraid to like ZRemesh or anything like that while you're working. When I use my Wacom, every time I turn the wheel to zoom in or out, the option to install XML tool appears. Oh. The wheel. Let me see. Do I have my... So I got a Wacom. Now your XML, is that under File, Open XMD Toolbox? You can install it there, but... so here's my Wacom. I think I've got all of this stuff disabled. Touch ring. So that's the touch ring, right? Turn the wheel. Or you might be talking about something I don't have. I assumed this, but I could be wrong. Yeah, it's not doing anything. Touch ring. Show touch ring setting. Oh, there it goes. So I can turn my touch ring back on, but it's not pulling up any. I never actually use any of the functions on my Wacom tablet. I am a keyboard person, so I'm a little out of my element. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good one. I installed XML. Now, I assumed it was XMD, but you said XML tools. I don't know. I've never... don't want to install... How do I remove this option? To Panda's comment, I agree with that. Whereas like if I'm like zooming in and stuff, you can use like right click navigation. That's in your preferences. So I have my pin, and then actually here you can see I have right click set to the bottom button and then middle click set to the middle button. I actually use middle click for navigation in like Max Maya, Moto Blender, Cinema 4D if I'm using my tablet. But in ZBrush, I just need my right click. I will say under preferences, interface, navigation, enable right click pop up. I turn that off if I'm going to use right click navigation, just because I don't need that menu popping up and I never use it anyway. So yeah, right click navigation if that's easier to kind of rotate around a single point, or just kind of using your document over here to zoom around. I know a lot of people like a 3D mouse. They have the, in fact, I think I got some on here. If you're a Space Mouse user, I have a video on that you can use. But yeah, I don't know. I can't reproduce that on my end, but you might have a more fancy Intuos than I do. Cool. Thanks, John, for stopping by. But yeah, like I guess I would agree with the comments, just to be like, again, I wish I could. I guess if I had to go fix that, it sounds like a Wacom issue. I think. So like, I would normally just like disable it, like everyone else is saying. But like if you really need to use a touch ring, and again, I'm not gonna tell you have to use ZBrush in any particular way or not, but when you're sculpting your standard brush with cloth, I turned lazy radius off earlier. I'm gonna go ahead and tap L to turn that back on, just to even my strokes out a little bit. So we'll go ahead but yeah, I wish I can't reproduce it on my end, but fiddle with your Wacom settings and see if you can't. I guess you can't disable it though. And when we were doing so we did this, right? Let's see, X symmetry turned off. Go down mesh center. So we did BTA, which is transpose cloth. While we were doing that, I was making like very symmetrical rings, which isn't very cloth-like. You know, cloth doesn't usually across the midline. It'll like dip down and, you know, tuck under each other and stuff. So I'm just going to make this look a little bit more irregular. But while we're doing that, we don't have a ton of geometry on here. So now if I do, we're on subdivision. Here's subdivision level 1, which is like nothing. Subdivision level 2, I'm actually going to say delete lower. Like this is like the low res I want to work with. I think that's better. Now, if I hit Control D, that'll give us more geometry, and you can still go through here with your transpose cloth and use that extra geometry to give you more wrinkles. In fact, we can go in here like your pinch brush, and right now it's just pinching geometry, but for any brush, you can go in here and do a elasticity simulation iterations up to 100, and then while you're pinching, it'll go through and use cloth simulation. So you can kind of use this to go through here. Like you can go through and sculpt and then come back in and, you know, cloth sim it up a little bit. So let's go ahead and turn our Z intensity back up on our smooth brush a little bit. Again, we'll kind of sculpt this down and sculpt this over and then go back in with our pinch brush and kind of simulate that cloth a little bit. And then we'll come back in here. So we're kind of going back and forth between simulation and sculpting. And of course there is more, like if you wanted to, for instance, and also I'm going to go through here and uncrease all. So while I'm subdividing, I don't keep that harsh line that we had earlier. Also, so BC brush cloth hook, for instance, we can go through here and we can kind of move cloth around like this, but like this is insane, right? Too much. But we do have like brush cloth nudge, but even this, or brush cloth slide, there we go, nudge. So you can kind of nudge your cloth around a little bit, but if you want to make it even safer, you can go through here and we can do our thick skin. So if you turn thick skin on, That's going to, and then we change the thickness. This is how much ZBrush is going to allow you to sculpt. So if we turn our thick skin up to here and then we go back to like our clay buildup brush, eventually it'll cap out. It'll only allow you to sculpt, you know, this thickness distance that we dialed in. Same thing for your cloth brush. So if we go here to BC, again, cloth hook. Remember how crazy it was before? Now when we use it, it's like we're pushing it, pushing cloth along an interior surface. So now if we go in here to, again, BC brush cloth nudge, you can go through here and you can kind of nudge your wrinkles around or your clothes around a little bit. And in fact, you could even go in here to like your move brush, and again, simulation iterations up to 100, and now your move brush will behave like a cloth brush. So use thick skin if you need to, and then really quickly, and again, this is just refining, right? So I need to bring back my character sheet so I can see what I'm doing here. Oh, there it is. Let me move this over a little bit. Let's see. Zoom. Cool. Touch ring zoom works fine, no errors, but I never use it. Okay. Yeah, so you were using the Intuos wheel. I don't have a wheel on mine. So I can't test it on my end. But there's got to be a setting. I don't know why it's trying to install anything. Unless it needs that for some reason. I'm not sure. I wish I had a better answer for you. But, oh, now that we got a body in here, actually, let's do this. So I've got a cloth thing, right? So I'm going to hold down Control-Shift, isolate these caps here. We're going to say delete hidden. Yeah, we're going to say delete hidden. You know what? We don't even need this. So we're going to say delete hidden. So we got a body underneath here, right? So let's keep this in the body. And if we go in here now and we go into our dynamic menu, we can say we have gravity turned on. Now, if I just run the simulation here, it's going to fall right through his body. Not great. However, it is going to collide with the floor because we do have floor collision on. So if we turn that gravity down and then we run the simulation, oh, my clothes fell off. So we want it to collide with the body. We're going to go ahead and say collision volume on. And now when we run the simulation, it'll kind of stick to his body, but it'll still collide with the floor, which is right underneath that last subtool. We'll go ahead and say don't collide with the floor. Gravity strength way down. And then we'll just run that. And now you can use this to kind of get you the beginnings of like cloth fold, right? However, we don't probably want the top part to move that much. He's got, like, I'm going to move that manually, but I do want to simulate the bottom a little bit. So we can go in here with our mask pin, go in here to mask lasso, and be like, you know, this stuff here, let's go ahead and Control Tap to soften that a little bit. And all your masking options are under the masking menu. So if you know, quick overview of masking, we can mask. If you Control Tap, that'll soften it. If you Control Alt Tap, that'll tighten it up. It's all in here. So you can blur, you can sharpen. It's just a little bit faster. So we'll soften that a little bit. So now when we run that simulation here, it'll kind of drape against the body. We'll get those nice wrinkles going. Again, if you want to preview this, so if we undo that, we say geometry, dynamic. If we turn dynamic on or hit D in our keyboard, by default, that gives us a smooth preview. It's not real, but while you're running your simulation, you can kind of see what your cloth will look like after you subdivide it. You can also turn on thickness for your cloth. So like, again, we turned off, we got rid of our caps, but we can go in here and, you know, put on fake smoothness, fake thickness, run the simulation, and it'll still give you a preview result. And if you like it, you can say dynamic apply. But that way you can kind of start getting some natural cloth look, getting some natural hang. It does look like on his wrist, this cloth is folded over, so I can go ahead and build that in after the fact. I'll show you how to do that really quick, but for now, let's go ahead and we'll turn thickness down to 0 and turn dynamic off. We'll go ahead and run that simulation real quick, get us the semblance of a wrinkle. We'll unmask this here, and that's kind of the beginning of our cloth here. I'll go ahead and even this out a little bit here. And then speaking of cloth and thickness, I'm not a huge fan, especially being from game development, like simply going through here and doing a like extrude all polygons here and like making thickness. And then if your verts invert, go in here to display properties and hit flip. Your normals invert there. This is just a lot of wasted space or a lot of wasted geometry. And now you have to worry about like, oh, if I'm going to go in here and sculpt, now you're going to be sculpting through your object. If you have double turned on, thin objects can create a lot of problems while you're sculpting because they're going to start poking through each other. You can see like here when we back out, see these lines, these surfaces are very close to each other now. It's just a pain, right? So usually what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll cap instead. I'll say like close convex hole here. And then if I do another cap, I'll just tap Alt to give me a new polygroup. And then I'll go down here and tap Alt, give me a new polygroup. So now all of these are separate polygroups. And then I'll go through here and I'll do like an inset polygroup all legacy. We'll go ahead and just like inset here, and then we'll do another inset, and then I'll go back to extrude, and then just hold down Shift and just pull this down. So that way, like on the arms here, again, we'll do another inset polygroup all legacy. Give me that. What are we doing here? Inset polygroup all legacy. This polygroup, not that one. Weird. Here. Okay. Polygroup island. I don't know. Is there like a polygroup in there? No. Okay. Anyway, go through here, and again, we can hit W, Control tap that polygroup, and that will. Oh, we have BTC, go back to brush transpose classic, brush transpose classic. W, if you hold down Control and tap a polygroup, that'll auto mask it. Seems to be doing something weird. Anyway, so we're basically going through and just we're giving the illusion that there's thickness on here, but we're really just capping on the inside. So we have to deal with thin meshes and wasted geometry, like taking up memory on the inside. Oh, you know what? I do have an extra ring over there. I'm going to do a quick mirror and weld. That's the danger of when you're doing like polygroup operations. How did I... I don't even know how I did that. Hold on. X symmetry's turned on. Close convex hole. Alt tap. Okay. Isolate. I don't know how I ended up with one on one side. Anyway, user error. Sorry about that. Really quickly. Inset. Polygroup island. Pull in. Pull in. Again, W, Control tap. You can use... It's doing a really soft mask for some reason. I can fix it. It's just weird that it's doing it. Here, Alt tap to give me a new polygroup. Okay, we're fine. Double check my work here. We'll avoid that soft mask. And this bottom one here, exact same deal. Inset here, inset again. W, Control tap. Nope. Yeah, for some reason, it wants to do like a really soft. So you to avoid that, isolate it, mask, invert, move. That'll make it so it's not a soft mask, but whatever. Okay, so instead of thickness, we're doing caps. And now we can go through here. We can even this geometry out a little bit here. have this hang a little bit more naturally. Well, he's not a super, he is a supernatural character. And again, now that we're using cloth, we're probably going to break symmetry quite a bit. I'm doing overall volume changes symmetrically, but you know, whatever. Same thing for the, let's go ahead and scale this out a little bit. Same thing for the hat. This geometry is kind of, oops, let's do Shift D to turn that off. This is all one side. If we do like a geometry, depth size down to 0, same ZRemesh. Yeah, ZRemesh has a hard time with these points. I'm gonna hold down Shift, turn on Sculptors Pro, and just kind of turn this into a softer transition on the end there, and I can always pull that to a point. So now when I ZRemesh half, there we go, a little bit better. And then at any point we have X symmetry turned on, I can go through here and sculpt this out. And then again, for the cloth part, we can go through here. Let's turn off Sculptors Pro. We'll do a quick pass where we're like, okay, let me kind of start to indicate where these folds will end up going here, and where the cloth, like kind of like the sorting hat in Harry Potter. And then we'll hit, I don't know if we want to hit Control D. Let's talk about capping this too, because my gut tells me I want to say maybe close convex hole on this one, isolate, inset. So there's our thickness, and then we'll do another inset here. This one gets tricky. Let's think about this. Let's do this. I don't want to cap like that. I do want to do this. I'm gonna do a quick extrude polygroup all, because I don't want to do a Q mesh because it'll start sticking geometry in there. So I'm going to do a quick extrude, but I don't necessarily like all this stuff in here. I don't really care about how, I don't need a super deep cap in here. So what I'm gonna do is hold down Control Shift. With select lasso, this will actually select an edge ring. I don't know why it's doing both sides. Okay, let's switch to ZBrush. BZM. Let's hover over an edge. And let's do polygroup, polyloop. And then I'm gonna Control Shift tap the blue. We're gonna do an auto groups here. So now I can just say Control Shift tap between these two polygroups here, Control Shift drag, delete hidden, and now we can close off about right here. This edge, close convex hole. So we've got thickness where we want it. We went ahead and capped it here. We don't have to worry about like thin meshes up here, and we can keep sculpting cloth. Now I am going to go ahead and do like a crease PG to, so as I'm subdividing, it's keeping these edges nice and crispy. I can always go back manually and like smooth it out. We'll hold down Shift and turn on our Z intensity. But for now, as I'm going through and like sculpting the cloth parts, I'll go ahead and turn off X symmetry, because, you know, this cloth isn't going to be some like folding symmetrically, obviously. And then again, go back in here with our pinch brush with elasticity turned on. Whoa. Okay, we have our collision volume still turned on. I'm like, what? Yeah, so go through here, and we can even turn gravity off. So go through here, and again, Control D to subdivide. And if you want to have more, so right now we have subdivision of set to 3. If you want bigger wrinkles, you can just drop your subdivision down, and then it's behaving a little bit weird. And then you'll obviously get bigger wrinkles because there's less geometry. However, you can also have your subdivision levels up. You're getting smaller wrinkles, but then you can go in here to your firmness and crank that up. So then as it's doing your cloth simulation, it'll keep your cloth a little bit firmer, if that's useful. So anyway, Also compression. So if we go through here and we say control drag, so BTC for transpose classic, we can drag and mask as we go. If you go back to BTR transpose standard, that's when you're dragging along, it does a very soft fall off. So in this case, that's kind of what I want. And then we'll go back to BTA, which is our transpose cloth. And then you can go through here and you can, again, hold down Alt if you want to kind of, let's go back to subdivision level 2 and kind of use this to kind of wrinkle it up a little bit more. And then go back up in your subdivision and then just continue to go through and kind of sculpt your stuff. So this hat brim got a little thick. No big deal. Let's see if we can do this. Let's go to some level 1. Let's go and I'm going to hover over this. Extrude polygroup all. I'm going to hold down Shift. It's not going to let me. Let's isolate it. Let's do mask, invert, and let's do an inflate. Let me? No. Here's what else we can do. We can do a pinch. So we'll go ahead and turn on X symmetry. We'll go through with our pinch. Let's go back to our, we have simulation iterations up, so we can do cloth sim. Let's go ahead and turn that down. And then we can just go through here and we can kind of pinch along the edge here. And then I'll kind of make those verts a little bit closer. And then now when we subdivide back up. And again, this line is super harsh now. So we'll hold down Shift. And kind of smooth along here. And then if we want to, I should have thought about this, but we should have put a polygroup here so I could have kept this creased so that we could have this like harsh dividing line, but we can also just introduce that. A couple different brushes you can use. Damien Standard's an easy one. You can go through here and just kind of, you know, dial in that cloth seam line along here. If you got more resolution, another good option is brush. Geo Soft Forms, you can get it from ZBrush Guides. Make your brush a little bit bigger, and this will actually go through and do kind of a pinch. Not really a pinch, but just give you a very nice soft. And in fact, there's a Damn Standard 02 you can download. maddamnart.com. We'll go ahead and select that one. And this one, again, make your brush size pretty big. And this one will give you an even finer line. And then again, you can go back in here and you can pinch and push those edges a little bit closer together. And you could even try simulation iterations up to 100. So while you're pinching, it'll do a little bit of a cloth sim. So it'll kind of roll the cloth, give you maybe more of a natural seam line along there. But anyway. Okay. This, we'll go ahead and say, let's do another crease PG so that while we subdivide, we can maintain our edges a little bit, and then we can go and manually soft them as needed. Same deal with the cloth here, like where the elbows are. We want to kind of indicate, let's actually turn, that's fine. We want to kind of indicate, you know, where the elbows are and where the cloth's hanging from, and all the cloth sculpting that y'all know how to do to make this look convincing and enhance it. And then again, turn off X symmetry down the middle for sure, and kind of use this to kind of go through and break symmetry. Same thing along the back here. We need a big, okay, I guess we just do a quick fly paint. Now I did mention that we need to do the ring around his wrist. That should be super easy. So let's turn on X symmetry again. We'll kind of reposition this a little bit further. It's actually not that far down the wrist. It's about here. And then you could build this in where you like literally go in and you can inflate that out and then bridge around. I'm probably going to keep this separate, I think. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this off. Let's go back down to subdivision level 1. We'll say delete higher. I'm going to grab these three here. Control, these 3 edge rings here, Control Shift drag, delete hidden, extrude out. And then this one here, I'm going to hold down Shift and just pull that in just a little bit. And that'll give me, and then we'll do another crease PG, Control D to subdivide. In fact, if we want to, you know, do dynamic turned on, and then we say smooth subdiv of 2, crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 3. That'll give us a preview of if we were to subdivide this up 3 times, but turn out the creasing. Again, just a preview, but that'll kind of give you that overlapping cloth look. And then if we like this, it's just dynamic. It's not real. You can say apply. Now you got real subdivisions, and then you can go through here and, you know, do all your cloth stuff just like we did. So BTA, let's turn on LSIM. And then the hands, that's just anatomy. So subdivide, continue to, you know, look at your own hand. That's always a good start, especially if you got old man hands like I do. Great for goblin hands. Be 44-year-old dude, and you got good goblin hand reference. Otherwise, go find somebody, get their hand reference, or look it up online. But yeah, you'll basically just flesh that out. Really quickly, because we're running out of time. And again, this is all just refining stuff. Y'all know how to do that. We'll do a quick poly paint. So I'm going to, let's do the eyeballs. We'll hit Control D a couple times. I'm going to sample these colors. So let's do this. We'll go out of edit mode, hit Control N. We'll do a quick save real quick. I'm just going to grab a plane. A couple different ways we can do this. If you go back through my live streams, I'll show you a bunch of different ways. But just for now, I'm going to steal these colors. So we've got a poly plane here. I need to go into my BPA, which is our standard brush with RGB turned on. We're going to go in here to samples. We're going to have spotlight projection turned on. This poly plane, I'm going to make a polymesh 3D. I'm going to hit Control D until we're up to like 1,000,000. And then we're just going to paint. Sorry. I have a bad habit of like hitting my hotkey for standard brush. So instead of using my paintbrush, I'm going to just turn off Z add for my standard brush. And we're going to just paint RGB color onto this plane. Then we're going to say Shift Z. We're going to put this plane over here, and then we're going to go out of edit mode and drop that to our canvas. We're going to go back to our working file here. We're going to drag it back onto our canvas, go here, edit mode. We're going to swap our material out for skin shader, which again is just in your material here, skin shader 4. And then we can just tap C to sample. I'm going to hold down my hotkey for color fill object is Alt Control F. So we're going to sample this one here. F. If it's not going to do it, I guess I'll just do it manually. Fill object, Alt Tab, Alt Tap, C. Fill object, C, fill object, C. I'm going to have to paint the hand in manually. So again, we have RGB turned on, and we'll go ahead and paint. C, and if we've already filled, we can just tap C over this one and Alt tap the, the wrist cloth here, and then again, fill object. We'll say C. Fill object, red hat C, fill object, and then that O, we might just paint that manually. Let's do X symmetry. We'll do subdivide one more time because we need, it's poly paint, so we're painting on the verts, and the more verts you have, the cleaner it'll be. Let's turn on, with our standard brush, let's go into Alpha 06. It's just black, so I'm going to sample the black from his head. And then Yeah, it is just like it's like a Squid Games. Oh, one thing we could do is for this brush underneath alpha and textures, let's go into polypaint mode is right. Tablet pressure, sorry. RGB intensity, I'm going to crank this up. So while we're painting, it's just a little bit more intense. It's not quite as soft. In fact, we could even, the more you max this out, the more it makes it like 100%. So that's like using your mouse. We'll turn it down just a little bit here. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So we're going to say, oh. And you could go through and you could like paint, if you have like an alpha of an O or something like this, I suppose you could use like text or something like that, but we're just going to eyeball it. We're in good enough stage. We got 5 minutes left. And if you want to, you can tap C to sample this color. And now you can kind of go through here and there we go. Oh, and the ears too. So I'm going to go ahead and C here to sample the hand color, Alt tap the body, and we'll go ahead and just paint that ear. And then on the inside, right along here, it looks like anything that's being touched by that hat shadow is just pure black. And then we got to put in his little pupils here too. So back to the eyeball here, C, and then let's turn off lazy mouse, maybe. Yeah, that's about right, right? Something like that. We'll compare. And then if you want to pose them, there's all sorts of ways you can pose them, but I'll drop you some links here. If you want to do like a, I don't know if Transpose Master is probably your best bet. Oops, not post. Pose. Proxy pose and all that good stuff, but we'll just do a really quick transpose. So we'll hit Control N to clear our canvas. And we don't need color anymore, or dynamics, or samples, or this. So if I want to go ahead and pose everything, I'm going to hit 9 to store. And then because we have, if I go over here and I do subtool all low, you're going to see if I go in here, and then, so do all low and then do a merge visible. And here's our new merge version. You're going to see, oh, first of all, his hat's inverted. I need to fix that. Good, check. Second of all, everything has a low res version. Like this is still pretty high, but it's workable. So what I'm basically doing is making sure I don't have like a 5 million polygon vert bomb ready to make my life terrible when we go into Transpose Master. So we're in good shape. I'm gonna say delete this. We're gonna go back to our working file here. If I tap the hat and go down here to display properties, I have double turned on, and you're gonna see, oops, I shouldn't have. Let's go in here and hit flip. Oops. Because we have subdivisions on it, what we have to do is we'll go to the highest, we'll delete lower, we'll flip our verts, and then we'll go back here and we'll say reconstruct back here. There we go. So we're in good shape. So we'll do all high. So this is our high res version, and this is where we'd have like all of our sculpted detail and everything's looking really good. But now I want to pose everything together. So I'm going to go in here to Z plugin, and we'll say Transpose Master. We'll see T-Pose Mesh. That's going to combine all of our objects into one mesh here. So now if I want to like pose the arms, let's turn on X symmetry. We'll hold down Control. We'll say Mask Lasso. So we have his body underneath his clothing, but we can now rotate everything together. And I still have Transpose Cloth turned on, which isn't a terrible thing depending on what you're trying to do. But for now, I'm going to say BTC for Transpose Classic. And then we're just going to go through here. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to put the arms down a little bit and then maybe go out of X symmetry, and we'll mask the other arm. And we'll kind of move this arm here, and we'll go with the elbow, and then we'll kind of bend this here, and then, oof, let's do this. Bend this here, and then on the wrist here, if I want to just bend at his wrist, I can isolate just his body. So Control Shift A to grab all polygroups, and then you can just mask and pose just his body parts here. And then again, if we're going to like bend the fingers here, we can say, let's like bend this finger up, and then we'll say mask this, and then move the pivot, and then bend this down. So you can see very quickly and easily we can start posing this guy. And then same deal here. Let's say, let's set this pivot in here, and then again, we'll kind of do a little finger out. And if you hold down Alt and just drag on your mesh, you could use transpose lines for this. It's been a while since I've used them, but there's nothing wrong with them. And then if we want him to look up, let's temporarily take his hat here, invert. We'll go ahead and blur that a little bit here. So it's like we want him to like look up into this. Oop. Let's go to unmesh mesh center. We can like have him look around a little bit here, tilt his head a little bit. But before we do that, let's make sure we got that hat visible so we can kind of be like, hey, I'm looking this way. Dee-dee-dee. Anyway, pose them out however you'd like. You could even do stuff like this. Let's go to B. Let's go ahead and center this. And let's do a, go into your cog here. Let's do a bend curve. And let's add some resolution here. You could, because he is kind of cartoony, you could go through here and be like, let me do a little spectral bend like this, or even a twist. You could go through here and like kind of twist him around. Like obviously his arms are going to do some weird stuff. But if we add some resolution, maybe we could go in here and maybe, yeah, it's probably not going to work that well. But anyway, you could do stuff like bend curve. And then once you're all done posing, we could say T-pose mesh to sub T. That's going to go through here and move his subtools out to his new pose. Ta-da! And then, you know, do your BPR render and make him look all nice. Anyway, 8:02, we made it. Let's see what comments, and then we'll wrap it up. Good result of cloth transform and just squeezing it together. Yeah, with like pinch or like move, or yeah, that mixed with so if you want to turn off your poly paint, just hold down shift and turn off these little arrow keys. Poly paint mixed with, or I'm sorry, pinch mixed with elasticity. And then also remember, we were talking about earlier with the thick skin, use that to kind of control how much. And again, even like on this arm, you could like push around. So if we say, let's turn on thick skin here, and then brush cloth hook. Nope. Brush cloth hook. So as you're kind of pushing geometry around, this is like, let's turn that Z intensity way down. Yeah. And also remember, you can go down here to like subdivision level 2, and then you can kind of just push, like you said, push this geometry together. And you could be with move brush with simulation iterations turned on. You could go back in here with your pinch brush with simulations iterations turned on and kind of pinch together. But yeah, in a pinch, it works just fine, I think, to get you started at least. Let's turn Z add back on, RGB turned off, alpha off, etc., etc. And that's also true. Marvelous designer. You could take. In fact, speaking of marvelous. I got some Marvelous Designer quick start guides, you know, hopping back and forth and ZRemeshing and stuff. But also, if you want to convert, if you want to do your geometry in ZBrush first, make some quick UVs, and then send that over to Marvelous Designer and turn it into a pattern and then simulate, you can do that too. That's this video right here. That might come in handy for some people. Cool, cool. Yes, and that's the other cool thing too. If you want to do an expose You know, now you got the whole body sitting there, and you could flesh it out, and now you've got maybe when Orko becomes public domain, you can start telling the Orko story and have a shirtless Orko. Cool. Thanks, everybody.